and a wonderful example of how to use data and show that we really need to start early. And early means right when we develop the idea for the project and authorize it. So thank you very much. I've seen a couple questions in the chat here, and feel free to add more to the chat. Also, there's a poll here for those of you that are looking for continuing education units. Please complete that poll. We're going to try to run through a couple questions here and end this session right at 9:15. So I'll mention the questions, and Matt and Andrew, if you could be fairly succinct in your responses, that would be great. We will have more time to chat about the questions and other topics in our open discussion session later. So the first one comes from Ray Coleman, and it's for Matt. And it's specifically about the types of hazards that were identified, maybe what was not identified or what was identified. Were there any themes? Did it have to do with experience or anything like that?
Hey, John, thanks.
Yeah.
I saw the chat come through, so I'm prepared and I'll be quick.
Yeah.
Probably not surprisingly, the designers were pretty good at identifying hazards related to the specific component that they were designing. So if it was a mechanical, electrical, or plumbing type of an MEP type of system, they're pretty good at seeing the electrical or the pressure. Designers with more experience were able to envision the context of the work, more about the configuration, maybe confined spaces, what other tasks would be happening, concurrently, and those sorts of things. So that's where the experience really came in. For designers with experience, they were able to envision a little bit more about the adjacent hazards. But interestingly enough, the designers with almost no construction experience, they were seeing the hazards related specifically to that one little component, and gravity and motion hazards, meaning things that they would need to move, or if they were working at a position of height, and that was it. Designers with more experience were able to see some things related more to pressure, things related more to mechanical systems, for example, tension and compression, and things that might change temperature. So that was really the big thing with the difference between those with experience and those without experience, was really the ability to envision more of the context and more what could change throughout the work process instead of just related to that kind of static component.
Yeah, it makes sense, Matt. And many years ago, I was a structural engineer and I knew about structures. I couldn't tell you anything about any other part of the design, but I knew about structures, and I think that makes sense. So I'm going to move on here just so we get a couple of these other questions in. There's a question from Cheryl Schultz. Thank you, Cheryl. And it's to Andrew, I believe. And it's an important question about the differences seen between design build and other forms of contract. Did you monitor that, Andrew?
Yes. And again, I'll try to be brief. If the question was asking, is there a difference in safety results? Our data show that lump sum, unfortunately, predominantly lump sum construction does have worse safety performance than does some reimbursable format, whether that's reimbursable by multiple subcontractors or a single contractor operating under a reimbursable format. So as two populations controlling for size and other factors, lump sum construction as a contract format does demonstrate statistically less safe in terms of the traditional metrics. And I hope that was the general line of that question when it came in.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I know that we've seen that when there's an overlap between design and construction, when you can get the construction expertise during design and planning, upfront planning, that helps very much to improve safety during the project itself. So thank you. Maybe one more question, and then we'll break for the networking break. And I see the next one here is from the great TJ Lyons to everyone here. And I'm not sure if it's for Matt or for Andrew, But how does one get this approach in front of an owner? So both Andrew and Matt, maybe real quick, your thoughts about getting this in front of an owner.
Well, I'll go first. From our perspective, front-end loading is primarily the responsibility of the owner. Now, certainly not all owners as mature as perhaps the clients we're dealing with, but even immature owners who only do infrequent major capital projects, they should have a competent EPC or feed contractor working with them who should bring this understanding of front-end loading and its requirements before you get to the authorization gate as part of their services. This should be something even an engineering contractor should bring to bear when dealing with an immature owner. Whereas most of our really mature industrial owners have their own processes and are really drivers of this whole front-end loading process. So I hope that kind of addressed it from my perspective.
Yeah. Matt, one more comment before we move on?
Sure. Related to my section, I think the tool and kind of technique was really focused on just something to help the designers do what they're already doing. I think, the energy concept probably isn't terribly useful for the owner unless they're participating in design reviews. But if it applies to getting design in front of the owner, I think it's a challenge, right? Because they have to see the incentive to really do that. And I think beyond altruism, in the US, we have some work to do, right? We don't have government regulations. We don't really have an incentive stream. So I think the owners have to see the value. Maybe we could compute the return on investment for them or something along those lines. But right now, it is definitely a big challenge.
Yeah, definitely a challenge. Thank you. Thank you, Matt and Andrew, for the wonderful presentations and the answers.